Most financial advisors follow the industry playbook. Elite advisors choose a different path. I'm Sten Morgan. Welcome to the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast, where top advisors share the strategies, mindsets, and the stories behind building a better business, adding more value, and the courage to grow through resistance. Because becoming an elite advisor is not about working harder and longer. It's about choosing a better path.
The way you get paid for your services tells a story. And if you're not comfortable with any part of that story being on the front page of your local paper, you better change the way you charge.
Because the reality is AI is going to be able to write that condolence letter, but AI is not going to be able to read that letter and look at another human eye to eye, face to face, and deal with the emotional that comes out of that. And so the more reps that you can get in those kinds of conversations, the more you're going to be ready to have those, and the more you're going to be in demand from people that really want to deal with the human in these most emotional moments.
This episode of the Elite Financial Advisor Podcast, I'm going to hang out with Carl Richards and Steve Sanduski, two powerhouses in our industry, and I'm going to challenge them with some questions about what's the future of our business look like? What is the advisor of the future? What skill sets they need to have to be great, to add a lot of value to the marketplace, but also be an efficient business owner? So let's jump into that conversation. I'm glad you guys are here. I want to get you guys in the room. Obviously, thinkers, a lot of experience. I want to kind of run like a war game scenario in a way. Like, we're going to throw some stuff out, not for the sake of being edgy, but like, what's going to be different? You know, I feel like Musk says stuff all the time where we're like, there's just no way. And we're like, well, there's probably a way. Like, some of that stuff will come to pass at some point. So when it comes to our business, financial advisors, the future of this business, I want to just kind of brainstorm together. Like, what should advisors be ready for? What could shock and surprise us, and see where it takes us?
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So I'm curious first, Carl, I'll start with you. Like, I see the stuff you do. I don't know if this is how your brain works. Like, do you automatically go to like unique scenarios, creative things? Like, are you living in the world of like, it's always going to be different? Or how does that come when it comes to financial planning?
Give me a little bit more.
Yeah. Do you find that you're like a contrarian, not like a conspiracy theorist, but like when it comes to the future of our business,
yeah,
if people could get in your head, would it freak us out? Or are you like, oh, that makes sense?
No, I mean, I actually think that people like Steve and George Kinder and even Bill Bacharach, like, there's a whole group of secret little people hiding around. They're not so secret, but, you know, had been meeting in the woods 20 years ago.
Sure.
Pointing at something that I think is actually a far more beautiful version of the work we do. It's been happening. I mean, Dick Wagner, like, we go back a long ways. But it, you know, they met at secret places and it's now just becoming much more apparent that the piece of money and our relationship to it. So I guess what I'm saying is what people have been pointing to for a very long time is the deeply human aspect of this profession, right? The numbers and the spreadsheets are incredibly important. Don't get me wrong, but without this sense of like, what am I really doing this for on the client's behalf, right? Like, we end up in this place. Stephen Covey talked a lot about it, this problem of building and climbing a ladder your whole life only to find out it's leaning against the wrong wall. And what I think, again, Steve and Bill and Dick Wagner and George Kinder, what they've been pointing to for a long time is like, hey, what wall? Right? Like, why are you doing this in the first place? And that's a different craft than the one we're typically taught in financial planning school. And that one we're taught in financial planning school, like the spreadsheet and calculator stuff, is incredibly important. But I think what I'm seeing increasingly, and I just think, you know, the latest version of the replacement problem that we have, you know, with like robo advisors and now AI, is actually just pointing us to something really, really beautiful. It's not a threat, it's a reminder. It's a reminder of the deeply human work we do. And that is a different craft. But I think a far more beautiful craft. Like you become a dream maker, not just a spreadsheet builder.
Nice.
And so that's, I hope that doesn't freak anybody out. I mean, I know it might freak somebody out that is like, look, I didn't sign up for somebody to cry in my office. I don't know what to do about that, metaphorically.
Yeah.
But I think most of us recognize like, man, I want to be better at that. Like it's deeply connective. It's human. It's beautiful. It's full of meaning and texture and richness.
Yeah.
Like what's that worth? Like that's only become more valuable, not less.
Yeah. It's good. Steve, what comes up in you as he lays that out?
I would just tag along to what Carl was saying there. And if you think about an advisory practice, there might be two layers. So layer one is the execution layer. That's all the operational work. That's putting the plan together. That's onboarding new clients. It's all what we might call the service work. And then the second layer is the human layer. And that's what Carl's talking about in terms of the beautiful part, the sitting down with clients in their most emotional moments. It's talking about their relationship to money. It's helping them interpret what the plan is suggesting or recommending. That's the really hard part of being an advisor. And what I see happening now is AI is basically automating and commoditizing that execution layer. And we're seeing it now. We just saw Humanity Labs and Mariner Wealth Advisor just came out with a big announcement that Mariner is going to employ or deploy 700 AI FTEs. So they're basically going to hire 700, the equivalent of 700 human employees, but in the form of 700 AI digital workers that could do the equivalent work of 700 humans. And so they're basically trying to let machines, AI, do the historical operational work, which then frees up time for the humans to do what only humans can do. And I think there's going to be tremendous, I'll call it tension and tussles along the way as we try and figure out what is the right mix between what a machine can do, what an AI can do, versus what a human can do or what a human should do or what other humans want their human advisor to do for them. So I think it's going to be a fascinating next few years to see how all of that is going to shake out. And the other thing I think is going to happen as a result of that is if we're letting technology remove the friction layer, and advisors were part of the friction because they would do, some of the operational work. Now, what's going to be left is the really hard part of being an advisor, which is that emotional piece. It's sitting with them when they come to you and say, my spouse has just been diagnosed with the terminal disease, or my spouse passed away, or we're getting divorced, right? So if all the operational stuff is off the advisor's plate, now you're just meeting with clients all day long and you're dealing with a lot of this heavy stuff. Every other conversation might be a heavy conversation. So it's like, how much of that can a single advisor handle? And I think I'm kind of throwing a lot at you here, but that also gets to, we think AI is going to increase capacity, which it certainly will at the operational layer, but I'm not sure how much it's going to increase the advisor's capacity to deal with more of those intense emotional moments. And I think that's certainly up for debate these days.
It comes up in me. I look back to the young version advisor, Sten, that was like, I'm here to solve problems. I can crunch numbers. I can sell product, and like that.
Hey, Sten versus the old version of you now.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's a good way to put it. But,
sorry,
I think what happened,
I couldn't help myself.
No, you're good. But I was like, that I felt comfortable with. Like that was a business I was willing to get into because it made sense to me. It felt predictable. Yeah. It's the coaching, inspiration, emotional side that my story and my logical mind, like life had to teach me things to be able to sit with those people in a new way. But if you tried to recruit me into this business by saying what you guys just said, like, this is the skill set of the future, this is what's going to be more important, I don't know if I would have said yes. Like, I don't know. That might have scared me more because I don't know if I would have felt capable or what's the path to be great at that part of it.
Yeah.
So what do you say to, a 20-something young advisor that's like, hey, here's where the business is going. Blocking and tackling is important, but it's not going to be a way to differentiate yourself. Here's what it looks like. Here's the skill sets you need to develop and get really good at.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been, I think I've been saying this for 20 years that like when college age students ask, what should I do to be a financial planner? It was pretty quick in my career that I understood, like, maybe it's the psychology department, not the finance department.
Sure.
Like, maybe you want to get a marriage counseling, a degree in marriage counseling rather than finance. Because you can always learn, like the finance, at least the finance that most of us are doing isn't insanely complicated, and now it's even easier. So I was just having this conversation with somebody who was like, I'm thinking about financial planning, and we were up in the Tetons actually. And I had to sort of like stop myself. I was so excited about explaining, like, do you realize what the job actually is?
Yeah.
And so I think maybe it's just so there's that version, like find the people who want to do that sort of thing. Most of us got into this business not thinking that, like, I didn't sign up for person, but there's another version, which is, yeah, you know what? Come super technically competent person and come get reps. And then you're going to watch, like, you're going to learn to pay attention for the crunchy bits in the conversation. You're going to learn to feel emotional resonance. You're going to lean into, and I found people like college age folks now much more comfortable than I would have been back then, because I was completely unaware of any emotion. I didn't even know what that meant. Right? I found people much more comfortable with, like, hey, like my kids are that age, 25 to 22 to 30. And they are often like, hey, can we lean into that a little bit? Like, they're listening at a different level. So I'm not terribly worried about that part. I think the thing that I'm most worried about for advisors is that you don't know the difference of what Steve's talking about here.
Got it.
Like that you.
Steve, that helped me a lot. I think breaking it up into a service and then the human layer.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I first started hearing like emotional intelligence in finance, like I was like, that's silly. Like, I'm not going to spend time in that. I just didn't get like I'm sure it helps and it sounds nice, but man, if you just solve problems for people and bring solutions, like, you're good.
Right.
And there's probably a space for that for quite a while. But man, it's not as deep. I think there's an element or an experience you can have in this industry that's much more. But there's probably a space for transactional, more shallow planning for quite a while, maybe forever.
Yeah. Well, and to your point there, so I look at this as we need to be bilingual. And what I mean by that is we need to major in money and we need to major in humans. And this is really, to your point, Carl, something you've been doing for decades. Is it's that intersection of money and humans that gets really messy. And that's the human part, that's the psychological part, that's the behavioral part, and there's real value in that. And so I would tell new advisors that that's one area, that intersection between money and humans, you really need to get schooled in. I'd also say you need to get as many reps as possible in meetings where difficult conversations are being had, and you need to study under the mentorship or apprenticeship of an already skilled human advisor who knows how to deal with those things so that you can see what's happening. I'd also say throw yourself deep into the friction. And what I mean by that is AI is removing the friction. As I said here a moment ago, it's going to do a lot of the operational work. A simple note taker is going to record the conversation. It's going to get the transcript. It's going to tell you all the key points and the insights and the action items. Okay. But you as a new advisor, you need to be in that room. You need to take your own notes. You need to try and identify what are the key insights that I'm picking up as a human advisor. And then after the fact, go back and sit down with your lead advisor and talk through, well, here's the notes that I took. Here's what I thought was insightful. And then the lead advisor shares, what do they think? And then you look at what did the note taker say? And the gap between what you had and what your senior advisor had and what the note taker had, that's really your curriculum in terms of what you need to be studying to get better. So don't give up the basic work of learning the nuts and bolts and the technicals. Sure, AI can do that, but it's like that, that old image of the iceberg that we've all seen. You just see that little tip sticking up at the top. Well, down below, of course, is all of the main part of the iceberg. It's the same thing with the knowledge base. If we allow AI to only be, to our knowledge base, we only know the little tip of the iceberg, and AI is doing all the deep work underneath. We're going to get tripped up the first instant a client asks us a question that we can't answer because we didn't know the in-depth work that's below the water iceberg kind of thing. So New advisors, your work is still cut out for you. You got to do the hard work. And I'd just say one other quick thing here is, Carl, you spent years in this area as well as I have in terms of sort of the life planning part. I keep hearing everybody saying that to be a successful advisor going forward, you really have to dial in on the life planning, the life coaching, that sort of thing. And while I agree with that, my experience has been there's only a small percentage of the population at any given point in time that's ready to have those conversations.
Right.
And usually it only happens when there's a trigger, and it could be a divorce. It could be, some kind of, mental health issue. I mean, who knows? It could be I lose my job. It's like there's only moments in time when people are really open to having those kinds of conversations, particularly with their financial advisors. So if you're really hanging your hat on, I'm going to be this life coach to my clients, you're going to have a small market over time. And so to your point, Sten, about sort of the transaction, I wouldn't necessarily use the word transaction, but I would use that there will always, I think for the foreseeable future, there will be a high demand for human financial advisors who can work on a professional relationship with their clients to solve their really complicated situations. AI is absolutely going to help in all that. Both it's going to help the client know what to ask and what to think about. It's going to help the advisor put things together. But those humans are still going to want to talk. Doesn't mean that client wants you to be their best friend or be their life coach. They've got a problem to solve. They know that you can help them think through it on a professional relationship. And I think that's great. So I think there's room for both, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Carl, would that trigger in you? Did something come up?
Yeah. I mean, I just think that, to Steve's point, like, no one really wakes up looking for a life planner. Now, we can all argue they should, but that's not what I said. Like, no one wakes up knowing they have that problem. In fact, I went back and looked. I made this claim once that the New York Times column ran for every week for 10 years, and I made this claim that no one ever asked me for a financial plan. I got thousands of emails a week, right? Sure. No one ever asked for a financial plan. I went back and looked. No one ever asked. I don't think anybody wakes up thinking they have a financial planning problem.
Sure.
I think they wake up with a financial question that needs an answer. And I call those the presenting problem. And so I think somebody shows up at your door with a presenting problem. And sometimes I know my desire would be to just be like, oh, that's cute. Let's talk about your life and the meaning. But it's just over and over and over. I've seen the best way possible, which is, to Steve's point, like the best way possible to help people and to build a business is to greet them with empathy at the presenting problem. And realize that, like, sometimes I compare it to an arrow in your arm. Like, if you, the analogy is funny, but I thought it was a good idea to buy my 12-year-old son a bow and arrow once. And so I'll spare you all the details. But if you end up with an arrow in your arm and you're at the emergency room and the doctor says, how's your diet? How's the flexion in your ankle? You're going to be like, bro, get that arrow out of my arm. And I think understanding that, greeting them with at the presenting problem, and then maybe like this idea of like, and then being on the lookout. Like, I love the idea of like being super like up on a tower with binoculars, paying really close attention to little doors that might open into meaning. I call those crunchy bits. Like just somebody might say something like, oh, I've always wanted to, or my mom always told me not to be spoiled, or like, if you, and I think that's you're just looking for those openings to deepen the relationship. And it's not like you then say, hey, I'm your life planner.
Sure.
You just do the thing.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that interplay of like, you're doing both. That's what it means to do real planning. Right.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
So I wonder about like what will change that could feel shocking to people as you guys have seen different iterations of the business. We're paid differently now. The products look a little different. Is there a version, and if so, how long, where AUM fees are just not the primary way we make money anymore, or insurance is all algorithmic, and except for the top 1% of complicated cases, insurance commissions aren't really a thing anymore. Like, even if it seems crazy now, like, do you guys foresee a world where the comp structure, what we sell and get paid on, is dramatically different?
What do you think, Steve?
Well, I think a number of things are going to happen. One is I think the floor of what's going to be considered a great advisor is going to be raised. And what I mean by that is today, you can be a great advisor using e-money or CRM or portfolio rebalancing software. I mean, and there's all kinds of resources that you can tap into to be a great advisor. Well, again, AI is going to take care of a lot of that. And so it's going to be table stakes for an advisory firm to be able to put together a great financial plan, because I can get an AI off the shelf that's going to put that together for me, and everything's going to look super duper. So what's left then is, again, the human piece. For those clients that want to interact with a human, your game is going to have to be upped dramatically in order to effectively communicate with that person when they know that, hey, I don't need you to put the plan together. I mean, that's easy to do now, maybe not today, but in the relatively near future, that's going to be relatively easy to do for someone. But it's like, how do I sit with the client? Again, it's sort of the EQ stuff. It's the soft skills, which we all know are really the hard skills. I think that's going to be in higher demand. The best advisors today are already really good at that. And so for those advisors, I don't know that their job is going to change all that much. They're just going to keep doing more of what they've always done and what they've always really been good at. But now technology is going to remove a lot of the friction, a lot of the operational stuff off their plate, so they can spend perhaps even more time on that, which again is emotionally draining. Again, that's another conversation. So for advisors who are not able to raise their EQ and their ability to have those meaningful conversations, I think those advisors are going to fall by the wayside over time. I also think new business models are going to come into play here because of AI. We go back to the promise of the robo-advisors. I think the promise of the robo-advisors is going to be fulfilled with AI. And so it's going to be interesting to see. And I think it's probably going to happen with the Fidelities and the Schwabs and the Vanguards and perhaps some of the large, multi-$100 billion RIA firms that are deep into AI right now. They're going to be able to figure out, how can I create AI advice business models that will allow me to deliver outstanding advice on a technological basis at a low price to people that may have $50,000 and are willing to know that I can't afford a human advisor, but I can get the next best thing from Vanguard or from Carson or from Mariner or from Mercer. And I'm taking all of their intellectual ideas that they put into their own proprietary AI. So if I go to one of those websites, I know I'm getting the best thinking of that firm in the form of a digital twin, let's say. So
Sure.
I think it's going to create some really interesting opportunities for these firms. And everyone's going to have to figure out, what's my mix between human advice versus AI advice versus hybrid advice? What do I charge for those different things? We're going to have premium models where if you want a 100% human experience, you're going to pay through the nose for that. And some people will. So I think it's going to create some interesting business opportunities for the creative entrepreneurs out there.
Do you think the AUM and insurance revenue streams are gone and it's more of CPAs and attorneys, people getting paid retainers or fees for service or hourly? Or do you think there's some element of product-based compensation for a long, long time?
Yeah, well, if you look at the ultra high net worth market, that's clearly over time been moving to a hybrid pricing model. So now you're seeing, like Steve Lokshin was early in charging a fixed fee for his ultra high net worth clients. A lot of other family offices have a hybrid fee. So they will charge some kind of fixed fee for a certain set of services, and then they charge a low AUM fee. So they do have those hybrid models. So what I see happening is with AI, my advice that I give to my coaching clients is you need to be thinking about moving even further upscale because people that have complicated financial situations, who have a high frequency of making complicated decisions and who have high consequences of those decisions. If you think about the combination of those three things, those people, I think, for the foreseeable future will want to work with a human advisor. And most of those people are high net worth, ultra high net worth. So you go upscale, I think you're going to be protected from AI. And so as far as the pricing, I think what's going to happen is we could see more of a hybrid model where you charged a fixed planning fee for a set of services and a small AUM fee for the AUM. But I think it's going to take advisors, kicking and screaming to get there because the AUM model is very profitable. It's recurring and you don't want to give that up. So we've seen it on the hedge fund business, 2 and 20 or 4 and 20 that they take. They're still getting that. And clients are still paying it. So I don't think it's going away anytime soon, but who knows?
Yeah. What do you think, Carl?
I have no idea.
Okay, that's fair.
I just think, I don't know. I just got back from a big 8-day motorcycle trip with my son through small towns in the West and some larger towns in the West, and realized that outside of this bubble where we think and read about this stuff all the time, there's still plenty of people out there that just need help making sense of the world and don't have time for such things. I gotta move the sprinkler pipe and I gotta get the kids to school and I think I've done a lot of hand wringing over the last 20 years about fee models changing, and I have no idea.
Yeah.
Here's the only thing I like to say about fees is look, the way you get paid for your services tells a story. And if you're not comfortable with any part of that story being on the front page of your local paper, you better change the way you charge. And that could be an AUM fee, that could be a commission, that could be a trip you get awarded. If there's any piece of it that you're not comfortable with, then you better fix that. That's all I have to say about it.
Do you feel our industry compared to others, there's more of a moat? Things move so slow that while we do need to be aware of what's changing, it won't be overnight. Nothing can be disrupted in a moment. It will see it coming. It'll change over time. AUM fees will slowly fall. You have time to implement financial planning and learn how to get paid for it. Or does the industry and advisors need to be ready for something more shocking?
I recently, if you just go back to, it's crazy to go back to 1997 in a 4-person cubicle at a high-end branch of a big brokerage firm that will go unnamed but has a bull as its symbol, is owned by a bank, in the private wealth group where we all shared a Quotron. And in order for you to, in 1995 at Fidelity, 96, 97 even, in order for you to get a stock quote, you had to call me. Right? And so at that point, there was real value in access to information and transactions. We had a name for those people. They were called stockbrokers. There are still people around who access to information and transactions is their value, and they are still getting paid for it. I don't know that I would like that job, but there are people, and I don't know that there's anything morally wrong about that job, but there are still people around. Then we move to this idea of asset allocation, right? Security selection and asset allocation. And this was Nobel Prize winning revolutionary work that turns out, instead of have a hunch, buy a bunch, you could take every individual security in your portfolio and evaluate it on its own merits, but also more importantly on the contribution it made to the whole. And we'd call that portfolio design. And Steve will remember this. We did this through a 17 question. If you were sophisticated, you did it with 17 questions. Most people did it with 7 to 12 questions, risk tolerance questionnaire. On the bottom popped a portfolio. And that was massively valuable. Like, it sounds, I hope all the youngs are like, that's crazy, but it was massively valuable. And there are still people who are getting paid on portfolio security selection and portfolio design. And I mean, and I remember back when that happened, I remember being like, oh, my stockbroker guys are dinosaurs and they're going to be dead. There's still some of them around. So and now we've moved to goal-based planning, right? Like, broadly sweeping, like, oh, what if we linked the portfolio design to your actual life? Crazy, novel, radical idea, right? And we got paid for that. And we added financial planning around. And obviously there were people doing all these things out in the woods early on. But, so I don't know. I just think there's a much better job.
Sure.
In my mind, and I should be less judgmental, but in terms of the thing I'm interested in, this deeply human financial planning that helps people align their use of capital with what's important to them. Okay, great. Let's do that work. And then the question you're asking is like, okay, how do we charge for it? I think we charge how the market says we charge, right? Sure. And maybe that's AUM right now. Maybe it's a retainer, and we just sort of pay attention to that. And to answer your question directly, it seems like it moves pretty slowly.
Yeah.
Right. But I think there's just definitely been a 30-year move towards transparency, clean stories, making sure everything could be on the front page of your local paper.
It does feel, if we zoom out, there's been a trend. Like it didn't take a hard left at any point. It's like moving towards efficiency, transparency, more of the human, where the advisor of the future could be a coach. Like, the most inspirational person wins, maybe, because it's not the technical. It's like, how do you pull people in, inspire them, and get them to take action the fastest? Like, is that the best skill set if we take this trend line and keep running it out?
I don't know if it's the best. I just know it's the one I'm interested in.
Sure.
And I mean, people like Dan Sullivan at the Strategic Coach has been saying, like, you're going to get paid for the process. Not like, literally, like, I'm going to take you through a process and it costs X. He's been saying that for 15 years, 20 years. Yeah. And I think there are more and more people doing that. So anyway, I don't know if that's the advisor of the future. I just know that's all I'm interested in. Like, I'm much more interested in the art of this business than I am the technical piece of it.
Yeah. Well, to that point about people are paying for the process, I mean, I could argue the opposite of that. They're not paying for the process, they're paying for the outcome of the process.
Right,
and so
right,
if we think about what AI is doing, AI is automating the process. So if you think you're going to differentiate by, oh, look at my 5-step financial planning process or my gee whiz. I mean, I know Dan's big and I totally respect Dan, so don't get me wrong, but he's been amazing. But this, branding your process, I mean, I think that may have been great in a previous world. Yeah. I think we're in a different world now where AI is automating the process and doing it in a pretty darn good way. And so if you think you're going to differentiate because my process is better than your process, I don't think that's the case for financial services. I think what clients want is they want an outcome. They want a feeling. They want a confidence level. And that's a combination of different things. And each client coming to you has different emphasis on how much weight they place on each of those. Some people may have a current PowerPoint or a current pain point and say, I'm retiring. I got to decide, do I take a lump sum or do I take an annuity? Okay. Sure. You got to solve that problem. They need an outcome there. They're not so concerned about your 5-step process for determining how do I, decide whether I'm taking a lump sum or an annuity. They just want to know, which do I do? The process basically in the past would show your competence. Like, you have a process to come to this outcome. I now trust your process. Therefore, I'm going to trust your outcome from that process. I think maybe we're skipping that step now with technology, that it's leveling the playing field of the calculation to go from, how do I get to the outcome? The playing field's being level. And people will say, well, I don't trust AI. And I always say, look, let's go back 25 years ago when no way in the world am I going to put my credit card on the internet because I don't trust it. Well, today, of course, who's not putting their credit card on the internet? We're shopping on the internet. So what we thought was unfathomable 25 years ago is commonplace today. Same thing's going to happen with AI. We think it hallucinates. We don't trust the outcome. Well, it's getting better, and we're going to be trusting the outcome. So, and I think it's happening a lot faster than people think from that standpoint. It's getting better and better. And then, of course, when you throw the human in the loop as the final check on the output, we still need that. Clients still want to know that even if you're heavily reliant on AI, I'm willing to pay you as a human to check the AI's outputs so that I can have confidence and trust in that. Because again, we're selling trust, we're selling confidence, and an outcome as part of that process.
Can I just mention one thing real quick? It's really interesting to me that when people go to find a financial advisor, speaking broadly, it's generally because they've got a presenting problem they need to solve. They've got some question.
Sure.
If you take that same client, this prospective client's become a client because you greet them with empathy I just retired, or I just left the company, I need to roll this 401k or whatever it is. You help them do that. Now you've worked with them 2 or 3, I often call as long as the financial pornography detox program is. To me, that was often 18 to 24 months. If you hear that same person, let's just go 36 months. 36 months later, talking with a friend of theirs about you, the words they use are not, "It helped me with my rollover." Sure. They use words like, "I trust them." Mm-hmm. They use words like, "Man, I'm just not worried about it anymore. I feel I've heard I feel aligned. The way I'm using money, it makes sense to me now." That's the kind of language that you hear clients who've worked with a real financial planner after 24 to 36 months. They would have never known. They would have never dreamed. They would have never even thought to ask that at the beginning.
Sure.
So something happens in there with a skilled advisor that the real value is something you don't even, and you can't really market it. You can't, the first person who says you can trust me loses, right? You can't, that's why nobody cares. That's why it was such a great disappointment when I left the big brokerage firm to start my own firm, because I wanted to be known as a fiduciary. And it was the greatest disappointment of my career that no one cared.
Yeah.
Right? They should care, but they didn't. Nobody knows. But you do know, when you have a real client relationship, you know the word, the language. They're asset portfolio design, asset allocate, whatever, yeah. Carl. I'm here because you know my spouse.
Sure.
And if I were no longer here, I know that they could trust you. That's the kind of language, which none of that to me is replaced by AI.
Right.
Yeah. The AI tools allow that to happen, but they don't replace it.
Yeah. I got a perfect example of what you're talking about there, Carl. So I was having a conversation with one of my coaching clients, and we were talking about referral marketing. And I said, well, one of the things, to sort of instigate a referral or introduction conversation is if they give you a compliment. There's a great opportunity. And I said, when was the last time you got a compliment from one of your clients? And he said, oh, I got a great one for you. Just the other day, I was meeting with a relatively new client. And when they were in the process of talking to us and deciding if they wanted to work with us, they said, one of our concerns is, we've got this pot of money here, and I'm getting stressed about it because it's getting significant. And I'm I'm checking it all the time. And, markets go down, they go up, and I'm just sort of stressing out. And I need some help with figuring out, I can't keep going on like this because it's just too stressful. And he said, I just had a conversation with them, and they said to me, one of the things that we really love working about you is that I no longer have to check it.
Good.
I no longer have to check my accounts because I trust you. I have confidence in you. You've put me at ease, and I know that I'm in good hands. And so to your point, Carl, that's exactly what you're saying there is, how do you market that?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And how do you tell a prospective new client that? You can share the story,
Yep.
And they can sort of get the feeling like that's what I really do is I'm selling confidence. I'm selling trust. But like you say, I can't say, oh, you can trust me.
Right.
You can't say that, but I got to show examples that show, don't tell, right?
Yep.
You know, the old writers saw there. So, yeah, I mean, this is an amazing business. It's an amazing time. Yeah.
I'm curious as we break up, and I'm fully on board with that. And it helps me when you said it. Service AI is entering that space and it's going to be helpful. We think obviously it'll be clunky. People might get scared, but generally speaking, that'll make us more efficient, which then allows us to step into the other piece, which we're saying will never go away, most likely, of being a real advisor, differentiator. What does that look like for, and Carl, you mentioned your kids' ages, and they have some part of them that's better at this than you were at their age. What's the practical way to lean into this versus mine was like I resisted until life just humbled me, learned a bunch of stuff, became more empathetic, became more humble. What's an intentional path to building this part of the business?
To me, it's just as simple as to start practicing sort of anything you can around the craft of conversation or the craft of curiosity. Like just learning to pay attention. There's plenty written, there's plenty of programs and training programs outside of our industry. Like if you look at really good coaching, really good, not fake coaching, because there's plenty of that, but really good coaching. I've got a friend, Jennifer Garvey Berger, who's one of the smartest people I've ever met. And she runs a company called Cultivating Leadership. And she's a Harvard PhD executive coach. You spend an hour with her. So here's the deal. I used to do this thing called Carl Walks with Smart People. I didn't tell anybody that's what it was called. But when I lived in London, I would try to go on a walk with a PhD every week. That was my goal. And I didn't tell anybody, but Jennifer was one of the people I'd go on a walk with. And I'd always go on a walk with Jennifer when I had a particularly challenging problem to solve. And after 3 rounds of this, I realized that I always came home with an answer and that she had never given it to me. And I was like, what sort of jujitsu is she pulling? So I spent a bunch of time that's what you do. Is you spend time with people like that. You read books like that, where you're like, okay, and I think it all comes down to just being curious and asking really good questions and learning to listen learning to listen from your heart, and that emotional resonance that happens in a room. And I call them crunchy bits, and then learning okay, great. When I hear and see one, practice with your kids, practice with your spouse, practice anywhere you can where you're like, oh, that's an interesting word you just used. That word, somebody about 2 hours ago, I was talking to somebody and they used the word should 7 times in a row. And it's just interesting to be like, hey, can you explain to me that word? Oh, Jennifer told me if somebody says to you, we had her on the Society of Advice call, and she said, if somebody says to you, I want a stable future, she's like, you better understand you have no idea what they mean.
Sure.
Right. And so to have an opportunity where you're like, hey, could we talk a bit about stable? What does that mean? And future? Are you talking 2 years? Okay. So learning to be really good at that craft, which is just, conversation and curiosity.
That's great.
Yeah. Just along those lines, Carl, 100% agree with what you just said there, is to put yourself in as many rooms as you possibly can where you're forced to punch above your weight. And what I mean by that is you want to be in those difficult conversations with the senior advisor you're apprenticing or mentoring, however you want to frame that. You want to be in as many of those conversations as you possibly can. Because the reality is AI is going to be able to write that condolence letter, but AI is not going to be able to read that letter and look at another human eye to eye, face to face, and deal with the emotional that comes out of that. And so the more reps that you can get in those kinds of conversations, the more you're going to be ready to have those, and the more you're going to be in demand from people that really want to deal with the human in these most emotional moments in people's lives. That's not going to go out of style. AI is not going to take that away. It's going to take away, again, the operational stuff, but we still need that human piece. And that's a piece that can't be scaled either. You can get better at it. But, AI is going to make firms, it's going to give firms the capacity to grow much faster than we're able to scale the humans within it. And so we didn't even touch on the whole change management idea. And that's a whole nother conversation. And I'm definitely doing some work in that area. Like, how do firms deal with the change that AI is going to bring? And that's another big conversation.
Well, that might be one of your answers to this question. As we wrap up, what are you most excited about right now? Like, what are you working on? It could be personal life. I know you're doing sailing. So, like, what in your world right now are you like, this is getting me the most fired up?
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I'm going to take a word that Carl said, which I've said for many years as well. Just this idea of curiosity. I mean, I love to read. I love to put myself into new experiences. And someone had made a post on LinkedIn the other day, and they said, like, these are like the 8 characteristics of, I think it was like the 8 characteristics of people who like live the longest. And one of the characteristics was they're curious. And a second one was experiences. And I replied and I said, number 2 and number 8, I'm 100% dialed in. That's really where I spend a lot of my time, just being curious about everything and then also having experiences. And so I said, I have found that when I'm curious and when I put myself into new experiences, I end up developing new relationships. I end up doing all the other 6 things that were on that list of 8 happen as a result of me being curious and having experiences. So, like, we were talking offline here, recently did a sailing trip from Tahiti to Hawaii. Totally new ocean passage experience like that. But I met some amazing people and had some great relationships that have developed out of that. So it's like, to me, I'm curious. I go into different experiences and it leads to a whole lot of other things. So that certainly keeps me excited.
Do your experiences come from just saying yes to things that come up around you? Or do you have something where you're like, I have to find a new one every 6 months, something like that?
Well, they develop out of my curiosity. And so I had also mentioned that, I went on a sailing trip, invited on a trip a few years ago and said yes to it. And then that led to, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I need to do more of this. So then I pursued it, took some training classes, and that developed a new passion. So it is saying yes, but it's also through my own curiosity, I find things that I find fascinating and then I go deep, like celestial navigation. I mean, really nobody needs celestial navigation anymore. But last November, my wife and I flew all the way across the country to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to spend 4 days learning celestial navigation from a guy named John Kretschmer, who is just a legend in the sailing world. And he's been teaching this class for 40 years. And so when we did the Tahiti to Hawaii trip, I got the sextant and I'm taking sun sights and we're doing the calculations. And of course we got GPS, but I'm like, this is too much fun. And so it's like, do I need it? No. But am I curious about it? Absolutely. Does that lead to new insights and understandings? 100%.
That's good. Well, if I end up on Survivor or like high stakes trivia, I'm going to call you.
Yeah. Smart.
How about you, Carl?
Just what's got me excited?
Yeah. Well, obviously you guys are always thinking in the workspace, but you mentioned motorcycles, or like, what in your world right now is like getting you the most excited?
I mean, like the super easy one is I've got 4 kids that are all in the crux of just doing, like getting into school, med school in Wharton and Pratt for design school. And so spending time with them during this phase of their lives. I wasn't a particularly great young kid father. I was busy and not just busy, but wasn't emotionally as good as I wish I had been. Yeah. And so I always hear these stories of like the countdown number of summers you have with your kids. And I think that's really, really valuable. But I'm just super grateful that they don't, like, that's not the end.
Yeah, that's right.
Because, my they're all in their 20s. My 20-year-old kids are my best friends. And so just so one of them getting married in September. So like we're just buried in a super good way with all of that stuff. And which is sort of like I'm increasingly interested in the work we do around, right? If real financial planning is your use of aligning your use of capital with what's important to you,
Mhm.
most of our work's been focused on use of capital.
Sure.
But man, it turns out it's so fun to spend time trying to figure out what's actually important to you, what's actually important to other humans, and designing I call those forcing functions. Like, I'm going to learn to sail. Like in the motorcycle, for me right now, I got an adventure motorcycle that it's not about the motorcycle.
Sure.
It's just a forcing function to become a different type of person.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Right. And learn and grow and be curious. And, next year it'll be fly fishing. And last year it was the bird dog. And all of them, it's not about that stuff. It's about the forcing function to become a different kind of person. And that to me, that's the only reason I'm still involved at all in this industry, is because that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we really do, is help people figure that stuff out. So for me right now, it's the kids and the motorcycle.
Love it. Gentlemen, this was great. I appreciate you. I know we could keep going, but I know you guys got motorcycles and cruise sailboats to get to. So.
And work.
And and some of that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are still working.
Yeah.
Well, as Richard Branson said many years ago, I don't think of work as work and play as play. It's all living.
Yeah.
All living.
So good.
All right,
Cheers.
guys. We'll talk soon. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Take care.